Howdy, everyone. Welcome to the Drifting Rambles Fanfic podcast. This is Bats, along with.
Subsolar Drift, today with special guest.
J&J.
So, today is a little bit different than normal cast here since we have a guest author. We are going to talk about Grimdark, which is what JMJ normally writes, and we won't be covering any specific fics since we have an author that we can talk to.
Yay!
Woo!
Sounds good.
So, before we really get started, we should probably talk about what Grimdark is, because there are a lot of misconceptions about it. Because most of the time, when you hear Grimdark, you start thinking of horrible torture and rape stories that are 70,000 words of gross intestine stuff. And that's certainly part of what Grimdark is. And those stories are grimdark. It's just that they're not all that there is to the subject. They're not. It's like how a square is a type of rectangle, but a rectangle is not necessarily a square.
So, with that geometry,
Yay, geometry!
let's talk about what JMJ has written. He is JMJ has written 4 stories, all of which are very, very good, but are horribly underappreciated.
They are.
I appreciate you guys saying that.
Well, thank you. So they are Gutterloo, Pink Menace to Society, Secret of a Showmare, and probably the most controversial of them all, Rainbow Dash Gets an Abortion.
And just to clarify for everyone, I would say that in terms of true grimdark, all of them are except for Gutterloo. Gutterloo is more of a tragedy than a grimdark.
Secret of the Showmare is probably closer to what's seen as grimdark around places with the whole gore and guts thing, but even then, it's not even close to stuff like Cupcakes.
And Rainbow Dash Gets an Abortion has gotten some controversy, and we'll talk about that a little bit. Mostly, I think, due to the title, without actually reading anything. And shame on people who do that. Shame on everyone who judges a fic by its cover.
But so, I don't know.
So I guess we should just get started on basically, we can let's define what a grimdark story is. And this is something that I've written about on blogs and something that I've talked about at length with lots of people. So like a grimdark story, I like to use The Godfather as a comparison when talking about grimdark, because I think that The Godfather is a story that most people know, and I'm talking about the movie rather than the book, because there's some variations there, and the movie really kind of hits that grimdark perfectly, whereas the book is not quite as into it as the movie gets. So most everyone has seen The Godfather, or at this point has had it spoiled to the point where they've basically seen it. So if you haven't seen it, you don't know anything about it. What's wrong with you? Where are you in the world? Have you been living under a rock for the last 40 years now? I think it came out in 1972. So yeah. But so basically, Godfather is a story about Michael Corleone, and he starts out. He is the hero of the family. He's a war hero. He's been untouched by the mafia lifestyle that the family has. He's been kept clean of it. He is, his father wants him to be a senator. That's what he's supposed to be, not part of the family. But from everything that happens in the story, he is forced to make decisions along the way for the good of the family that draws him into that life and draws him further and further away from the good person he is at the start of it, until at the end of the movie, he is a far more ruthless and bloodthirsty Don than his father ever was, and has completely lost his soul. by the end of it.
He would have been a good senator, though.
Would have been. But, he started out good and pure, and you get to see that at the beginning. You get to see how good of a guy he is. And by the end of it, he is just ruthless and evil to his core. And it's one of those things that in watching the movie, if you had been given the character just at the end, you had been like, this guy's a jerk. I wouldn't, I don't like this guy. But you're not. You're given the character at the beginning and you're put in a position to root for him. So by the end, you're still rooting for him. You just realize that you're rooting for the devil. And
Scarface is kind of the same way.
exactly. You get the underdog. You get a good person, the person who's looking out for themselves and people around them and wants to do good things. That's the core idea behind the protagonist-antagonist combination character in the Grimdark story. Is it's someone who wants to be a good person. They want to help others. They want to reach out and make a change for the better. And because the world sucks, they do so in a slippery slope of progressively more and more questionable things until at the end they are far worse than anything that they were trying to fight against to begin with. And that's what Grimdark is about. And a lot of the more gory and really dark stories in the fandom touch on that, and they do so sometimes successfully, sometimes less than successfully, where they get that core idea across. But a lot of them also are really just there for the grotesquerie. It's just, thousands and thousands of words of torture porn. You're just watching Hostel 2 as only with ponies, basically.
Yeah, it's all about the shocks.
And I mean, that's okay, and people can like that. I don't particularly like it. I don't really want to read about full torture and full rape and guts for garters and blah, blah, blah.
No, I'd rather read something that has a great twist at the end that is well written and makes sense. That is a dark, quite frankly, really dark subject matter, and characters do horrible things, but it's kind of psychological rather than just shock value.
Yeah, I'd much rather end with on a story that's made me think about things. It's made me question my own morality than I would something that made me feel kind of gross.
Mm.
That's what I'm looking for in Grimdark. And it's something that I've found in JMJ's writing.
Yes. So, with that covered, should we start talking about his stories?
Sure.
Which would you like to start with? JMJ?
Well, I guess Gutterloo, since it's the newest one, and it seems to have done pretty well.
It has done well.
Deservedly.
Yes. And so Gutterloo isn't quite all the way grimdark.
No.
I mean, it's definitely more of a tragedy than a grimdark story. But it certainly has dark elements.
Yes, and the dark elements really, really make it. I feel make the story. The dark elements are the best parts. They, make it more than any others. Scootaloo doesn't have a family fic. It makes it so much better than those.
Yeah, I would say it's only really dark because of the fact she's totally alone. No one really seems to care. And I mean, it just has a lot of dark themes to it, like being abandoned. Constantly looking for something that you're not going to be able to find, and it's just a really depressing setting. That's why I threw dark in on the end as the tag, because it was, like you said, definitely more of a sad and tragic story than it was anything else. But it was fun to write, and all in all, I think it's pretty good.
That's definitely good.
It's different from your other work, but I thought I like sad. I write sad, so I love this story. I loved how it didn't end happy. Most stories, if they are sad, they always end happy. And if they're tragedy, they often still end happy in some ways. And yours, it had that kind of grayish area where she was happy as she died, and I still love that, and that was amazing.
I think it was very necessary to have that in there, because if it was just the sad, and it just has Scootaloo suffering alone and then dying without that ray of hope, it would have just been sad. It would have just been what I like to call misery porn. So it
Uh,
was definitely necessary to have that in there to be able to reach for the the hand that would save her, and of course it's not there.
Yeah, I mean, it was all in her mind there at the end, and it was just really, I mean, the whole story is just her getting broke down little by little. I explained at the very beginning that she had three things that really kept her going and made her feel, some sort of happiness, even though she was living this really, pathetic little life. And systematically, they all get broken down, and that's what I thought was fun about it. But at the end, I mean, it would just been terrible if the entire time it's just constant, attacks against the things she enjoys. So near the end, I figured. I mean, it was based off of an occurrence at Owl Creek Bridge, which is a Ambrose Bierce story, and it was really about like how the mind can, I don't know, not betray, but help you along, especially in times of severe crisis and things like that. Because it's a story about a dude getting hung. In his mind, as soon as the rope gets tense, it snaps. He falls into the water below. The guys above who are hanging him start shooting at him. He swims to safety, and it ends with him going back to his family. And I was kind of going for something like that, And what was happening in the story, Gutterloo, was even though all this terrible stuff happened to her, her mind still gave her that one little brief moment of respite before she, died pretty much.
oh,
So I just thought that was necessary for the end. It couldn't be completely sad the entire time. And it was kind of nice little twist ending there at the end, which I'm a big fan of anyway. Having her be like, oh, here's Rainbow Dash. It's all going to be okay. Oh, no, she was just staring at a poster and her mind was making stuff up as she died.
your
Yeah.
twist endings are the best.
Yeah, and that just it really tugged at me, because I'm kind of a fan of like Scoot Adopt stories that presuppose that Scootaloo is alone and ends up becoming a daughter figure to Rainbow Dash. That's really something that appeals to me, and I like those sorts of stories, and it's kind of in my fan and head canon, as like that's something that I'll pay attention to in the same way that I'll pay attention to like Twidash stories and whatnot. So to have that be there, it was like, yes, that's what I want, but I know it's not going to end that way. So it definitely was the heartstring puller there for me.
Something interesting while I read this is after Scootaloo was digging through the trash, and Mr. K came chasing after her. The way I like to imagine it is he realized that, oh my gosh, why is she digging through my trash? She must not have. Wait, she must live on the streets. Oh my god, I better get her to help her, and was chasing after her for that.
I read it that way too.
Yeah. And I felt that make it so much better because she was running away and scared, and if she'd just been caught, everything would have been okay in the end, but she wasn't.
Yeah, I like to leave stuff like that up to people's imaginations because I mean I definitely know what happened there. I almost wrote what actually was occurring, but I decided against it to leave it up to the reader and let them figure out for themselves what was going on. And it doesn't really matter because in the end, nothing really happened from that. Scootaloo ran off and made it back to her destroyed home, and nothing really happened because she heard somebody chasing her. What was really happening was Pinky sort of had an idea that she was homeless, is what I was kind of thinking. And so when she got chased out of the front, she went around back, and Pinky was thinking like, oh, she's probably going to go around back. Maybe I can catch her, and I'll give her, something. I'll just sneak her something real quick, and I won't get in trouble. I'll just be real quick and say I'm taking the trash out or something. And that was what I was doing. So when the door opened, it was actually Pinky, and then when she was running away, it was really nothing. I mean, she just thought something was chasing her. But I mean, that's left up to the reader, like what you guys thought. Mr. Cake thinking, oh, she might be homeless. I better chase her down and help her. And that's what I like about that. I mean, I leave a lot of that up to the reader's imaginations, and I think that's what really helps the story. So, I mean, who am I to say what really happened or what you guys thought happened isn't what happened? It's not up to me. That's up to you.
I
Either way works.
Yeah.
I mean, I I read it as her actually being chased, and I thought that it was a good mix between Mr. Cake or Mrs. Cake, even, or Pinkie Pie. That any of them could have been the one trying to chase her down. That they knew something was up, or maybe they didn't know something was up until they found her digging through the trash and they suspected something was up. But without her being chased down, either way, with it in the imagination or not, doesn't really matter. It's true.
Yeah, it was. I felt that made the fic so much stronger than it would have been if you just like downright said it. Leaving things up to the reader is something that works really well because they then have to, it makes them think and makes them like wonder and like, oh, is this what happened or is this what happened? Gah.
Yeah, I've had a lot of requests for sequels on that one, and I'm not going to do one. But I mean, that's something that's also left up to the reader. A lot of people really ask for sequels and like, I want to see what happens when they discover, her little frozen dead body in this trash can. Well, I mean, imagine what you want. It doesn't really matter because I'm not going to write the sequel, and I think it's going to be better for the reader and for the story in general if it's left up that way, to where it's just really whatever you want to do with it afterwards.
Yeah, stories like that, basically, a sequel is. I like to think of it as a lazy reader not wanting to imagine what happens next. And frankly, having to imagine it, I think, is better. I think that a reader's imagination for that is going, especially for a story like that, is going to be worse than anything someone can write.
Oh, definitely. I mean,
Because
the ideas I've come up with for a sequel to that, people would not like, because I mean, this is the most lighthearted story I've written, and it still involves Scootaloo being, or Scootaloo dying at the end. So I mean, the stuff that I've come up with for a possible sequel, like I said, that I'm not going to do, it wouldn't go over near as well. So I'm not even going to bother with that. It's really up to just whatever you guys think happened,
And with, is there anything else you'd like to talk about on the story, Bats or JMJ, either or?
I'm good.
Yeah, me too.
All right, so let's move on to Secret of a Showmare.
Sure.
Yeah.
Why not? All right, so Secret of a Showmare is a Trixie fic. Oh, Trixie.
We have a Trixie hater in the house.
I just Trixie is I hate her more than like any other character in the entire show, and in all of fanfiction, I hate Trixie.
Why's that?
I don't. Several reasons. She gets on my nerves. Her personality reminds me of how I used to be, and seeing that makes me really mad. So I just feel like everyone's obsessed with this character who does not deserve it.
So
that's why I love Secret of a Showmare.
Yeah. So you have a personal stake in that race, so that's pretty neat.
Yes.
I like Trixie, but I like Trixie as the villain she was in season 1. Like I liked how she kind of redeemed herself in season 3. I thought that was pretty neat. But I mean, you see a lot of fics where that's the whole premise of the fic is Trixie redeeming herself. And I still like to think of her as the villain. I mean, I love villains. A lot of them are great. I didn't really like Discord. I know that's like blasphemy, but I didn't like Discord. I like Nightmare Moon. Sombra kind of sucked because they didn't work on his character at all, but he was kind of a cool dude. They just really needed to do more with him. But like Diamond Tiara and Silver Spoon, they're like my favorite villains of the whole thing because they're just so snotty and bratty and entitled, and I love that about them.
Yeah.
Yeah, I like Trixie as a villain too. I thought that Magic Duel would have worked better if they didn't have that like what's with face heel turn at the end, where she's like, "I'm sorry, I was such a bitch," and then she runs away, and of course she face plants briefly, just to give her further humility. And it's just like it would have worked better without that. I had other problems with that story. Most of which boils down to the fact that since it was supposed to be a season 2 episode, Twilight feels underpowered to me compared to how her magic is in especially the Crystal Empire episodes and also the royal wedding episodes, which of course, as it was written, came before those. So if it was situated in season 2, it would have worked better in that regard for me. But even then, I didn't like there were a lot of good parts to Magic Duel. Everyone loves, and I especially love Trixie's distrust of whales and Fluttershy going out of the bubble, terrified in that ridiculous costume. You know, there were a lot of parts that worked really well, but I don't think it held together as well as some other stuff in season 3.
I really liked how the dome it reminded me of Under the Dome, by Stephen King. We've talked about that once.
Yeah.
I really loved that how, like, especially when they came back and you saw in the top, the uppermost portion of it, you saw the storm brewing. So you just know all that nasty, fetid air that wasn't escaping was just up there getting, disgusting and coming back down on them. So I just love that. I thought that was a really clever thing to do.
Yeah. I like, there was a lot of good parts in it. I liked the way they did Trixie's, like, progressive insanity, because it was clearly there, but it was still done in a really funny, lighthearted way.
Yeah.
I don't trust wheels.
Yeah.
I like all the monsters and stuff she had around town. Like the evil dictator.
Alright, so Secret of a Showmare. Basically, Trixie wants revenge on Twilight. And no, not even revenge, really. She has this plot where she goes to towns, does an act, finds powerful unicorns, and then she steals their powers.
That ulterior motive is a nice one. It's the best sort of twist on Trixie's character I've seen. To have it be that, because it's one of those things that what Trixie does in her first episode doesn't really make a lot of sense. I mean, basically she goes to towns and humiliates people there, or ponies there. And why? Why does she do that? I mean, I guess it gets viewers. I guess people want to see their friends get humiliated. It just doesn't really make a lot of sense because she's not really showing anyone up and proving that she's this really great, show pony who's out there to entertain a crowd. She basically goes and gets people to do what they think is cool and that they're good at, and then uses her magic to humiliate them rather than doing it again.
Skill there at all.
Yeah.
Hey, I'm going to show you up. Pay me money. That doesn't make any sense.
Right. It makes sense from a writing perspective of making you hate the character.
Yeah.
And by hate, I mean root against, not necessarily dislike the character. Because I liked her in that first episode, and in that I liked to hate her. So it was definitely worked from that perspective, but it didn't really make sense from like a logical, this is something that people do perspective. And to give it the twist that the reason why was to draw out powerful unicorns so she could go back and eat their brains and steal their power that was a good twist. It worked really well.
You know who Trixie reminded me of the story? If you've ever seen Heroes, she reminded me of Sylar. Or what she did reminded me of Sylar. He cut up in people's heads and stole their powers somehow, like through eating their brain.
Oh wow, that's coincidental. I've never seen Heroes.
Yeah, no. So that's the first thing that came to my mind when I said this, and I loved it because Sylar was a great villain.
Sort of. I have my problems with Heroes.
Oh, yeah.
The first season was good.
Yeah.
And then it just kind of went off the rails.
I only ever watched the first season, so...
Sylar was eventually a good guy, sort of. Yeah.
What?
They kept on, like, playing with alternate universes. So in that way, they made it really feel like an early 90s comic book mass. The Clone Saga in Spider-Man, where they had the Scarlet Spider and how that was a clone of Peter Parker, but maybe he was really Peter Parker and that the current Peter Parker was the clone and whatever.
Yeah.
So I mean, they definitely got the whole superhero comic mess across.
Well, mission accomplished. But so Secret of a Showmare, The twist I kind of saw coming. I knew Twilight couldn't lose because, well, she's Twilight, and if she loses, then I become angry.
And especially since I recommended it to you as someone
Yeah,
who hates Trixie, you knew something was up.
yeah. I knew she couldn't. I knew she couldn't lose, but and so I didn't. That the twist was amazing. Like first of all, Twilight steals her power, which is awesome. And second of all, that Twilight's been doing that to other ponies caught me completely off guard. I did not see that one coming.
And it just that right there played in perfectly to what Grimdark is, in the sense that you have just the villain in Trixie, but then you have Twilight, who's the hero, and she's been doing this for good reasons.
Yeah.
Trixie's doing it because she's addicted, and I like the whole play on addiction for it.
Yeah.
It just that she's doing this to get their power, but also she's addicted to the rush of it, and she keeps going for the next fix. And Twilight's figured a way around that somehow, and she's doing it just to be able to protect everyone. And that
Yeah.
right there is that heart of the heart of the Grimdark. Right there is that Twilight's doing it for good reasons, but her good reasons have led her to become really evil.
Yeah. And there was a book in there that was basically kind of like the Ponyville version of the Necronomicon. It was, I can't remember exactly where I said it came from, but it was from some ancient cult. And Trixie had a pretty impressive library, but she had that book, but she didn't have the complete book. She was missing a few pages. So while she got the gist of it and knew how to, increase her power by, feasting on other unicorns' brains, she didn't know how to keep up that level without it coming down. Like the addiction really hit her, Whereas Twilight had the entire book, knew how to get around it because she actually had studied the pages that Trixie was missing. Therefore, she could say eat a brain and be fine with it. She didn't get addicted to it. She could stay at a higher level for a longer period of time. Whereas Trixie, it only lasted, a few days or something like that, depending on how powerful a unicorn was. And of course, it got worse over time. Like I mentioned at one point, she was thinking like, "This shouldn't be happening already. I had 2 heads in my little freezer here, and one of them's already, kind of wasting. I mean, sure, I've been using a lot of power, but still, it shouldn't be over this quick. Oh well, I'll just eat Twilight's brain, and then I'll be really powerful for a longer period of time."
Yeah, no, it was fantastic because like her Twilight's motivation was like it made sense. You saw her be calm the whole story, and calm and like, okay, she's planning some way to get out of this, and then it's like, oh.
Yeah, she just knew she had, she had Trixie had her. She wasn't gonna lose. She was just waiting to see what was going on.
And I thought that was well done.
Yeah, and it was one that it fit into canon too, which is kind of hard to do with Grimdark. It's one that you can picture that this has been going on behind the scenes since the entire span of time of the series without it being out of character. Twilight is who Twilight is. She's a good pony. She helps people. She's there to help people. She just also does this some of the time in order to be able to help people better.
Yeah, it's the concept of the greater good or the chaotic good character, where the long run benefits are better than the short term problems that arise. Short term she has to eat some pony's brain every now and then, but in the long run she's saving thousands of lives. So which is better? Say over the next 10 years, is it better to kill off 100 ponies but then save off 10,000 or save 10,000 at the end of that? Yeah, probably. So that's why she doesn't really have a problem with it, because she knows in the long run she's doing very well for herself, and she's doing a service to Equestria and Celestia and all them.
Yeah, it's like the good of the whole over the good of the few, and
Yep.
Things that cover that are really, really good, and I love it when that's brought up into a fic, and I love that.
And I love the concept of her eventually being found out at some point. That story doesn't need to be told, but it's fun to think about. It's fun to think about how horrified everyone would be if that came to light.
What Celestia would say.
Yeah, exactly.
Like, because I can see 2 ways. Celestia would either hate her for it, or like realize that she'd been doing it for the good of everyone else, and like, I don't know, something then. Uh,
It's fun to think about. And
Yes.
that's the best out of these stories is thinking about the end results of them.
Yeah. Or she could be like, "Really, Twilight? I gave you this book and I taught you how to do this stuff, and you're gonna just get caught. That's great. Thanks. Now I gotta pretend I didn't know anything about it."
Yes. Yes. Oh, Trolestia.
A little bit of dark Celestia in there. That's always good.
Oh, I love Celestia. I think she's great. Like everybody talks about Luna, but I really enjoy Celestia. I think she's awesome.
I prefer Celestia to Luna.
Yeah, me too.
But I also love the idea of her being kind of corrupt behind the scenes a little bit, you know. And I've thought about writing a story like that. One of my buddies, Dane, he's been writing a story like that. I don't think he's planning on finishing it at this point, but he started up a story like that called the Patriots Armada, and it was pretty good.
Yeah, there's a story I've been reading and been obsessed with lately. It's the Lines and Webs, and it's basically Celestia controls like everything, and Twilight finds out, and she's not happy, and and then becomes a huge, amazing thing. And Twilight versus Celestia is something that I love. I don't know why. It's something about the whole teacher versus student thing.
Just going for that whole Star Wars thing in there.
Maybe. I'm not a huge Star Wars fan. I prefer Star Trek.
At last, it's so hard to find that on the internet.
But you prefer Star Trek to Star Wars?
Oh, much more.
Yes!
Let me just say, gasp! Oh my God, I cannot believe that.
So my dad raised me on Star Trek.
Mine too.
Kirk or Picard?
My wife's a big fan of Star Trek. We have lots of arguments.
I guess.
Picard over Kirk.
Thank you!
I was raised on Next Generation rather than the original series, so.
As
I'll give
was
you
I.
that though. Definitely Picard over Kirk.
Okay, thanks. Good. You have good taste. Even more so now.